Well, before I start my Sunday sermon, interesting on social media yesterday, I was actually described by a gentleman called David as a hate preacher. I thought that was interesting. So, and it was all because I said there were only two sexes and two genders. So I messaged back to David saying, do listen to the show, listen to my Sunday sermon, see what you think, and maybe call in. Let us know. So we'll see whether or not David calls. But yeah, interesting how some people sort of respond on social media to a basic biological fact. But today in the Sunday sermon, I want to talk about being cancelled. And I've got a top tip for everybody. You need a plan B, folks. And there's that old expression. Do you remember families talking and saying that old expression, cash is king? I always remember my uncle saying that to me when I was a youngster, and he always used to like a bit of the old folding stuff, you know, the £5 note, the £10 note. Occasionally there was the odd £50 note in the good old days when people were feeling a little bit better off than now. And never has it been more relevant than now, because you've got many shops and things, for example, and restaurants sort of doing away with cash, which means you have to have debit cards and credit cards, which you can only have if you have a bank account. But what if you can't have a bank account? And we're learning now the behaviour of some banks against those who've got certain political views, which may slightly veer away from the consensus of the nice, kind and compassionate people on the left, that certain banks are basically cancelling some of their customers. Yes, we learned this week, and we'll be talking later in the show, about the vicar who had an account cancelled by the Yorkshire Building Society because he responded to a customer survey questionnaire saying he didn't agree with trans ideology being pushed on children. And the Yorkshire Building Society cancelled his account because they said they didn't agree with discrimination. Really? He was just stating a biological fact and a point of view. Well, I'm hoping that that old expression, go woke, go broke, applies in many cases. Now, in 2020, two former Brexit Party MEPs, good friends of mine, had their bank accounts closed down. And it's just been revealed this weekend, it's in various papers. Christina Jordan, she had bank accounts closed down by the Nationwide Building Society. Unbelievable. Just shut down after years of being a good customer. Heinrich Overgaard Nielsen, likewise, he had an account shut down by none other than my good old friend Metro Bank, which replicated an experience that I had with Metro Bank back in the summer of 2021, those glorious days, when I got a letter as leader of the Reform Party saying that the Metro Bank wanted the Reform Party's account to be shut down within 60 days and we should take our money elsewhere. We'd never had any debt. We'd never had any complaints by Metro Bank. They just shut us down. No reason, no explanation. In fact, they refused to explain why. Now, I've been a director of hundreds of companies over the last 30 years in business. I've been involved and signatory to hundreds and hundreds of bank accounts, dozens and dozens of bank loans. And let me tell you, in all that time, never once did any of those banks ask me to shut down the account. They said, actually, they never wanted to do business with me again. But that's exactly what one Metro Bank said to me. You think, why is that then? No reason, no explanation whatsoever. Quite clearly, political. No ifs, no buts. And the Metro did that to another former MEP. If you don't conform to the consensus thinking, then you're in trouble. Luckily, I had a plan B. So I wrote to the Governor of the Bank of England, one Andrew Bailey, and I said to him, I said, surely democracy only works if new parties, small parties, can have a bank account so that we can exist and we can challenge the main two parties. He was very kind. He immediately replied and said he would promise me a substantive reply. Guess what? 2 years later, I'm still waiting. No substantive reply whatsoever. My request was that the Bank of England, if we couldn't get a bank account with anybody else, they should have a small department that is like a sort of a bank account of last resort. Now, you might think that's a bit extreme, but it's very simple with technology. The alternative is, you say, by law, you have the right to be able to have a bank account. That's the point. If you can't open a bank account, in today's world, you can't exist. And then you roll it forward, and when people started talking about the central bank digital currencies idea a couple of years ago, and you sort of thought, oh, it's all a bit of a conspiracy theory if they're really going to act like a sort of social credit system that you see in China, and they might stop you buying this and stop you buying too much meat and too much booze one week because you've had a bit of, you've been on it a bit. But all of a sudden, you see where this is going, because if they shut down your bank accounts, and if you can't open any more, how can you exist? And then you can see what a central bank digital currency could do. They just turn off various switches and they say you can't exist. I had another bank account closed with another bank, a small sort of digital bank thing called Tide, T-I-D-E. Again, I'd been using it for 6 years. And I just got a message from them on the app on the phone. We're shutting your account. Move your money. I asked for a reason and explanation. None was forthwith. They wouldn't give me one. Shut down after 6 years. Always had cash in the account. Never a complaint. No reason. Just cancelled. Thanks a bunch. And then this week, Nigel Farage confirmed that after 40 years, I mean, not 6 years, 40 years of being a customer with a certain bank, a subsidiary of a major clearing bank, that they wanted to shut his account. No reason given, no explanation. Some bloke phoned him up and said it was just a commercial decision. Really? After 40 years? It wasn't a commercial decision. I'll tell you exactly what it was. This is political persecution. No ifs, no buts. It's an absolute outrage. It is political persecution. Nigel put a video out. Within 24 hours, that video had been viewed 19 million times. And look, many people disagree with Nigel and his thoughts and his views and his ideas. But even the sane and rational ones amongst them said that this was an absolute outrage. And it is. He's also confirmed that his own family members have had bank accounts shut down likewise, just for being related to him. I mean, this is an absolute outrage. This is Orwellian. It's dystopian. You didn't think this could happen a couple of years ago, but it's happening here, in the mother of all democracies, in front of our eyes. And those nice, kind and compassionate people on the left, they sneer and they jeer and they libel us on social media and say, good, it serves you right. Really? Is that a democracy? I don't think so. And Nigel's confirmed that he's been to some 7 other banks and they've all refused. All refused to set up an account. Unbelievable. I believe that it should be a legal right to have a bank account by law. I understand that it's law in Germany. If any of my lovely listeners and viewers are in Germany, perhaps you can confirm that position, how that works. I mean, because you can't operate now without a bank account. I mean, yes, in the good old days, cash is king, and it still is king. You need cash. But if you can't spend it in certain places, and if people are sort of skeptical about it, you see the direction of travel, what's going on here. There's a deliberate process of making it harder and harder not to conform. And then you can't operate. And I'm telling you, you might think this is just happening to a few people with a few sort of well-known political views. I'm telling you, be careful. My concern is that this is coming. It's coming to a city, to a town, to a village, to a street near you, where you live. If you don't conform, if you say or tweet or Facebook the wrong thing at the wrong time, all of a sudden you're cancelled. And I'm telling you, here's the thing. If they can do that to someone as high profile as Nigel Farage, they can do it to you, they can do it to your family, they can do it to absolutely anybody. So I've got a top tip. Whatever you're doing this week, can I suggest, go and open a second bank account if you haven't already got one. You have to have a plan B. Because if you haven't got a plan B and plan A goes wrong, what does that leave you? Where does that leave you? This is what we're faced with. And if you do try and open a second bank account and for whatever reason they reject you, let us know. Give us a call, send us a message. I'm going to campaign on this. I think it's an absolute outrage. I've been impacted. Nigel's been impacted. Friends of mine have been impacted. We're just standing up for what we think is common sense. You might agree, you might disagree. But you're not living in a democracy if you can't have a debate. And frankly, if you can't have a bank account. So that's my top tip in this Sunday sermon. Have 2 bank accounts with 2 different banks. Always have a plan B. And with that, here endeth my Sunday sermon.